London, 1888, a city gripped by fear. Women were dying in the East End, brutally murdered. And then the letters started coming, lots of them. Hundreds, maybe even thousands. Most were fake, people just wanting to be part of the horror. But a very few, were different. They seemed to come from the killer himself. These were chillin'. They talked about the murders, sometimes in graphic detail. They mocked the police. They signed off with a name that would become legend Jack the Ripper. The big question, the one people still argue about today, is what was the killer thinking when he sent these letters? Was he just trying to make fun of the police to rub their noses in their failure to catch him? Or was there something else going on? Maybe a twisted attempt to help them, to give them clues, even if they were hidden in boasts. It's a deep dive into a dark mind, and we can only guess. But the psychology of these letters tells us a lot about what a killer like this might want. Let's start with the most obvious idea: taunting. When a killer sends letters to the police, it's often a power play. They feel powerful when they commit the murders. They feel even more powerful when they can then communicate directly with the very people trying to stop them. It's like playing a game, and the police are just pawns. The letters are a way for the killer to extend their control, to make their presence felt even when they're not actively killing. Think about it. The police are scrambling, desperate, under huge public pressure. Then, a letter arrives, claiming to be from the murderer. It usually says something like, "You'll never catch me," or "I'm smarter than you are." That's a direct challenge. It hits the police where it hurts, right in their professional pride. It makes them feel helpless, and that feeling is exactly what a killer like Jack the Ripper would want to create. He'd get a thrill from imagining their frustration, their anger, their inability to track him down. The famous Dear Boss letter is a perfect example. It's the one that gave him the name Jack the Ripper. It talks about sporting with the police, calling them clever, but it's clearly sarcasm. It promises more victims, even gloats about cutting a woman's throat. This isn't just informing the police, it's rubbing their faces in the grim reality of what he's doing and what he plans to do. It's an announcement, a declaration of war, and a psychological blow all at once. The fact that the newspapers published it made it even more of a public taunt, embarrassing the authorities for everyone to see. And then there's the Saucy Jackie postcard. It's short, quick, almost breathless. It talks about getting to work again and being saucy. The tone is playful, almost like a child boasting about a prank, but the prank is murder. This kind of language dehumanizes the victims even further, turning them into mere props in his game. It shows a complete lack of remorse and a chilling confidence. It's a killer who thinks he's invincible, a showman who loves the spotlight, even if it's a dark one. Many killers have a strong narcissistic streak. They believe they are special, smarter, better than everyone else. The letters are a way to feed that ego. They get to be the center of attention, the one everyone is talking about. They get to prove how clever they are by eluding capture. The letters become their stage, a place to perform for an audience of panicked citizens and baffled law enforcement. It's a twisted kind of fame they seek. The act of writing itself can be a release for a killer. After the intense experience of a murder, there's a need to process it, to extend the feeling of power. Writing a letter allows them to relive the crime, to savor it, and to project that feeling outward. It's a way to keep the excitement going, to stay engaged with the hunt, but from a safe distance. So, when we look at the taunting angle, it's pretty strong. The letters are aggressive, mocking, and full of boasts. They seem designed to frustrate and provoke. They want the police to know he's out there, watching, laughing. It's a pure expression of dominance and contempt. But what about the other side? Could he have been trying to help the police, even in a messed up way? This idea is much harder to support, but it's worth exploring the psychology behind it. When we talk about helping, we're probably not talking about the killer sitting down and thinking, how can I make the police's job easier? That's just not how these minds work. But sometimes, even when a killer is trying to mislead or taunt, they might accidentally reveal something about themselves. It's like a slip of the tongue, but on paper. For example, the choice of words. Does he use big words or simple ones? Does he make spelling mistakes? This could hint at his education level. Does he mention specific places in London that aren't well known? That might suggest where he lives or works. Even the handwriting, crude as it might be, could offer clues, though handwriting analysis back then wasn't as advanced as it is now, and many letters were dismissed as hoaxes, making it harder to establish a baseline. A killer might also be trying to control the narrative. They might send letters to point the police in the wrong direction, to create diversions. If they say, I'm going to kill again on Tuesday night in Whitechapel, but they plan to kill on Wednesday night in Spitalfields, that's not helping, but it's also not pure taunting. It's a manipulative tactic, it's a way of playing with the investigation, making the police waste time and resources. This kind of manipulation still stems from a desire for control and power, but it's a more nuanced form than just outright mockery. The From Hell letter is the most intriguing example here. It came with a small box containing a piece of human kidney. The letter claimed the kidney was from one of the victims, Catherine Eddowes, and that the sender had fried and eaten the other half. This was incredibly gruesome and understandably taken very seriously by the police. Now, was this helping? On the surface, sending a physical piece of evidence seems like it could be. It might confirm that the sender was indeed the killer. It might offer forensic clues. But the circumstances around it are murky. The kidney was preserved in alcohol, suggesting someone with a bit of medical knowledge or at least access to preservation technique. It matched Eddowes' known missing organ, but it was hard to prove definitively at the time that it was her kidney. If the killer sent the kidney, was it to say her, "This is proof I'm the one, now catch me if you can"? Or was it to create maximum horror and confusion? Was it a truly macabre form of proof, or was it another layer of taunt, a way to show how deeply he could invade and desecrate his victims, and then rub it in the faces of the police? Most likely, it was the latter. The kidney didn't lead to his capture. It added another terrifying, grotesque dimension to his legend. It became a piece of the puzzle that was more disturbing than helpful, and it's important to remember that the police had a massive problem with hoax letters. For every potentially genuine letter, there were hundreds, possibly thousands, of fakes. These fake letters were designed to mislead, to cause panic, to waste police time. People sent them for all sorts of reasons: attention, a twisted sense of humor, personal grudges. This torrent of false information made it almost impossible for the police to separate the wheat from the chaff. Any genuine clue was buried under a mountain of nonsense. So even if the Ripper had intended to leave a real clue, the context of the time made it incredibly difficult for the police to act on it. They couldn't afford to chase every phantom. The psychological landscape of the police at the time must have been dire. They were under immense public pressure, criticized by newspapers, and constantly dealing with fear and misinformation. The letters, whether from the real killer or from hoaxers, only added to their burden. Every letter had to be reviewed, analyzed, and often dismissed. This created a huge amount of work and stress, diverting resources that could have been used for more traditional investigative methods like interviewing witnesses or canvassing neighborhoods. So, the impact of the letters, regardless of the killer's exact intent, was largely negative for the police. They created confusion, fueled public panic, and put immense pressure on the investigators. They were a tool of psychological warfare more than a source of actionable intelligence. Let's think about the Ripper's possible psychological makeup again. A serial killer, especially one who commits such brutal acts, often has a deep-seated desire to be recognized, to leave a mark. The letters are part of that legacy. They help cement his identity. The very name Jack the Ripper was coined in one of these letters. Before that, he was just the Whitechapel murderer. Giving himself a name or having one given to him through these letters personalizes the terror. It turns an unknown monster into a named entity, even if that name is a terrifying pseudonym. This creation of a persona is a powerful act of ego. It means he's not just some random killer, he's the Jack the Ripper. And the language in the letters, even if brief, often suggests a twisted sense of humor. Saucy Jackie is particularly unsettling because it's so casual, so flippant about something so horrific. This kind of dark humor is a characteristic often seen in individuals with psychopathic traits. They derive pleasure from the suffering and fear of others, and they can be completely detached from the moral implications of their action. The letters become a way to express this detachment and to revel in the chaos they've caused. Could the killer have been seeking attention? Absolutely. That's a huge part of the narcissistic drive. The murders themselves demand attention, but the letters ensure that attention stays fixed on him, on his legend, on his ability to outwit the authorities. He's not just killing, he's telling everyone about it, describing it, almost boasting about his work. It's also possible that the letters were a form of psychological release for the killer. After committing such heinous acts, there might be a need to communicate, to express the overwhelming feelings, even if those feelings are sadistic or vengeful. The letters could have been a way for him to vent, to prolong the psychological high of his crime. He couldn't openly talk about what he did, so he wrote it down and sent it to those trying to catch him. This allows him to maintain his anonymity while still engaging with the world he was terrorizing. Think about the sheer audacity to kill and then to write letters about it directly to the police. It takes a certain kind of personality. It's not someone who is hiding in the shadows out of pure fear. It's someone who enjoys the game, enjoys the chase, enjoys the psychological torment they inflict not just on their victims but on society at large. Ultimately, the intent behind the Ripper's letters leans overwhelmingly towards taunting and psychological warfare. Any help that might have been offered was almost certainly unintentional, a byproduct of a mind trying to assert dominance and control, or to manipulate the investigation for its own sick pleasure. If the killer did reveal something about himself in those letters, it was likely an unconscious slip, not a deliberate attempt to aid the investigation. The police, dealing with the terrifying reality of the murders and the onslaught of false communications, would have found little comfort or genuine assistance in these chilling messages. They were more of a burden, a sign of the killer's ongoing defiance. The letters are a window, albeit a very cloudy and distorted one, into the mind of a monster. They show us a killer who was confident, sadistic, and eager to play games with his pursuers. He wanted to be recognized, to be feared, and to assert his power over everyone, even the very forces of law and order trying to bring him to justice. They weren't a lifeline for the police, they were another twist of the knife. They cemented his legend, ensuring that Jack the Ripper would be a name synonymous with terror for generations to come, largely because of the chilling audacity of his own written words.